The message came through at 400 hours. Admiral Park Min-ho was already awake, drinking his third cup of coffee and reading reports from the outer colonies. He looked at the emergency alert flashing on his screen and felt his stomach drop. 3 mining colonies in the Cygnus Arm had gone silent. All at once. That never happened by accident. Park was 52 years old and had fought in the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago. He knew what war looked like. This smelled like war. He pressed the emergency call button and waited. Within minutes, his senior staff appeared on the video screens around his office. "Tell me what we know," Park said. Captain Lee Hae-yoon spoke first. She commanded the carrier Indomitable and had a reputation for staying calm in bad situations. "Sir, we have partial communications from Colony 7 before they went dark. Unidentified ships. Military configuration. They hit the communication arrays first, then the power stations." "How many ships?" Park asked. "At least 30. Maybe more." Lee pulled up a grainy image on the shared screen. "These are Varathan warships, sir." "No question." Park stared at the image. The Varathan Empire. Of course it was them. The reptilian bastards had been looking for an excuse to push humanity around since Earth joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. They thought humans were soft, weak, new to the game. "Casualties?" Park kept his voice steady. Colonel Cho Doyon leaned forward. He ran the orbital drop troops and had a face that looked like it was carved from stone. "Unknown, sir. But we're talking about 847 colonists across 3 sites. Families, children." His jaw tightened. If they wanted to kill everyone, they would have just blown the colonies from orbit. "They took them." "Hostages," Park said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The Varathan wanted something. They were making a point. You don't take hostages unless you want to negotiate from a position of strength. Park looked at each face on his screens. "Get me everything. Ship movements, fleet positions, supply lines. I want to know where every Varathan military asset in the sector is located. And get Ambassador Kim on the line. She needs to know what's coming." The screens went dark as his staff disconnected to start working. Park sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. This was going to get ugly. 6 hours later, the Varathan demands arrived. They didn't even try to hide their intentions. The message was broadcast on open channels for the entire galaxy to hear. Humanity would withdraw from all disputed territories in the Cygnus. Humanity would pay reparations for trespassing on traditional Varathan hunting grounds. Humanity would formally apologize to the Varathan Empire for the insult of establishing colonies without permission. The price tag was enormous, 5 trillion credits. Enough to bankrupt Earth's outer colonial budget for a decade. And the territories they wanted back contained some of the richest mineral deposits humanity had found in 50 years of space exploration. Ambassador Kim Ji-woo called Park an hour after the demands went public. She looked tired, angry. "The council won't help," she said without preamble. Park had expected that, but hearing it still hurt. What was their excuse? "Territorial disputes are common." That's what they said. Kim's voice dripped with disgust. "They suggested we negotiate. They said humanity should have known better than to expand into Varathan space without proper clearances. Those territories were unclaimed," Park said. "We filed all the proper documentation. Doesn't matter. We're the new kids. The council species have been playing this game for thousands of years. They see us as naive children who need to learn how things work." Kim rubbed her eyes. "The Varathan have friends on the council. Old alliances. Trade agreements. No one wants to anger them over a human problem." Park felt something cold settle in his chest. So that's how it was. Humanity was alone, again, just like always. "What do you recommend?" "Officially? The council suggests we accept the Varathan terms. Give up the colonies. Pay the reparations. Move on." Kim paused. "Unofficially, I think you should do whatever you think is necessary, Admiral. Because if we bow to this, every species in the galaxy will know they can push us around." Park smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." He spent the next 3 days in meetings. The Joint Chiefs wanted options. The civilian government wanted guarantees. Everyone wanted to know if humanity could actually win a war against the Varathan Empire. The answer was complicated. In a straight fight, ship against ship, humanity would lose. The Varathan had been a spacefaring civilization for 2,000 years. They had more ships, better weapons, and centuries of combat experience. But Park hadn't become an admiral by fighting fair. He hadn't survived the Mars Rebellion by following the rules. And he certainly wasn't going to let a bunch of arrogant reptiles dictate terms to humanity. On the fourth day, Park held a press conference. His calm demeanor had returned. He looked relaxed, almost bored. That should have been everyone's first warning. The United Earth Space Force acknowledges the current situation in the Cygnus Arm, Park said, reading from a prepared statement. After careful consideration, we have decided this presents an excellent opportunity to conduct Fleet Exercise Omega-7. The reporters looked confused. Fleet exercises now? Park continued as if he was discussing the weather. Omega-7 is a comprehensive military readiness drill designed to test our fleet's ability to operate in hostile environments. We will be deploying all available assets to the Cygnus Arm region for the next 60 days. A reporter raised her hand. Admiral, isn't this a response to the Varathan attack? Attack? Park looked genuinely puzzled. I'm not aware of any attack. We're conducting a training exercise. It's been scheduled for months, he smiled. Of course, if the Varathan would like to observe our exercises, they're welcome to do so. We believe in transparency. That night, Park gathered his senior staff again. This time in person, in a secure conference room deep inside Earth's orbital command station. No recordings, no digital records. Here's what we're actually doing, Park said. He pulled up a star map showing the Cygnus Arm. The Varathan think they can bully us because we're new. They think we'll follow their rules. Play their game. He looked at each officer in turn. We're going to teach them a lesson about humanity. Captain Lee leaned forward. What kind of lesson? Park's smile was predatory. The kind where we dismantle their entire military presence in the sector without technically starting a war. We're going to run the most aggressive training exercise in human history, and we're going to do it by the book. Every regulation followed, every protocol observed. You want to fight them without fighting them, Colonel Cho said slowly. Exactly. We're going to show the entire galaxy what humans do. When someone threatens our people, we're going to demonstrate our capabilities so thoroughly that no one will ever underestimate us again. Park highlighted several points on the map, and we're going to rescue every single hostage while we're at it. Lieutenant Bae Soman spoke up. She was the youngest officer in the room, a hotshot pilot who flew the new stealth interceptors. Sir, the Varathan will see through this. They'll know it's not really a training exercise. Of course they will, Park agreed. But that's the beauty of it. What are they going to do? Complain to the Galactic Council that our training exercises are too realistic? Attack us for conducting military drills in neutral space? He shook his head. Either way, they lose. If they back down, they look weak. If they attack, they're the aggressors and the Council has to respond. Captain Lee nodded slowly. It's brilliant. And completely insane. Welcome to humanity, Park said. We don't start fights, but we sure as hell finish them. The orders went out that night. Every ship, every soldier, every pilot. Earth's military began mobilizing for the largest operation since the Mars Rebellion. But officially, it was just a training exercise. Nothing to worry about. Just humans practicing. The Varathan High Command received the announcement with amusement. Let the primitives play soldier. It changed nothing. Humanity would still surrender. They had no choice. But some of the older Varathan commanders felt a twinge of unease. There was something about the human admiral's smile in that press conference. Something cold and calculating, something that reminded them of predators. They should have trusted their instincts. The first wave of human ships arrived in the Cygnus Arm 3 days later. 20 carriers, 40 destroyers, and hundreds of smaller craft. They spread out across the sector in what looked like standard military formations. The Varathan watched and did nothing. Let the humans waste fuel on their little exercises. Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and studied the tactical display. Her carrier was positioned exactly 200 kilometers from the nearest Varathan patrol ship, close enough to be annoying, far enough to be technically legal. Beginning reconnaissance drill pattern Alpha, her tactical officer announced. Lee smiled. Reconnaissance drill, that's what they were calling it. In reality, they were mapping every single Varathan installation in the sector, every defense station, every supply depot, every communication relay. Human stealth ships were sneaking through Varathan space like ghosts, recording everything. The Varathan noticed, of course. They filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council about aggressive human behavior. The humans apologized politely and promised to keep their distance. Then they sent more ships even closer. Lieutenant Bae Somin loved her job. She was 26 years old and flew the newest stealth interceptor in the human fleet, small, fast, and nearly invisible to most sensors, perfect for what Admiral Park had in mind. "Tower, this is Ghost 7, she said into her radio. "Beginning attack run simulation." "Copy that, Ghost 7. Targets are painted. Remember, this is a drill. Weapons stay cold." Bae grinned and pushed her fighter into a dive. 3 Varathan cruisers sat in formation below her, big powerful ships covered in armor and weapons. They looked scary. But Bae had been training for this her entire career. She screamed past the first cruiser at speeds that would have been suicide in atmosphere. Her targeting computer locked onto the ship's communication array, weapons batteries, and engine clusters. All theoretical targets, all perfectly recorded. She pulled up hard, feeling the G-forces press her into her seat, and rolled past the second cruiser close enough to read the writing on its hull. The Varathan ships tried to track her. Their targeting system struggled. Their weapons couldn't get a lock. By the time they figured out where she was, Bae was gone, diving toward the third ship in a maneuver that no sane pilot would attempt. She pulled up at the last possible second and headed back to the Indomitable. Her recorder showed perfect attack solutions on all 3 targets. If this had been real, those cruisers would be dead. "Ghost 7 returning to base," she said. 3 simulated kills. No scratches on the paint." The Varathan filed another complaint. Human pilots were flying dangerously close to their ships. This was unacceptable behavior during peacetime exercises. Admiral Park sent a formal apology. "We deeply regret any inconvenience caused by our junior officers. They are still learning proper navigation protocols. We will include your feedback in their training reviews. Thank you for your patience as we work to improve our standards." The Varathan didn't know whether to be angry or insulted. Junior officers? These were some of the best pilots they had ever seen. And the humans were calling them trainees? Phase 2 of the exercises began a week later. Admiral Park called it live fire drills. The Varathan called it terrorism. Human ships started obliterating asteroids. Not just any asteroids. Specifically chosen asteroids that happened to be positioned along major Varathan supply routes. The humans would announce their target, broadcast warnings to clear the area, and then reduce several thousand tons of rock to dust with frightening precision. "We're testing our new weapons systems," Admiral Park explained in his daily briefing. "Accuracy is crucial for proper military readiness. We apologize for any disruption to local traffic patterns." The disruptions were massive. Varathan supply ships had to reroute around the debris fields. Travel times doubled. Costs skyrocketed, and every time the Varathan complained, the humans apologized and blew up another asteroid. Captain Lee orchestrated the next phase. She called it a drone deployment exercise. The official purpose was to test human ability to deploy and control large numbers of autonomous units in space. The Indomitable and its sister carriers launched thousands of small drones. Each one was about the size of a basketball, equipped with simple sensors and basic maneuvering thrusters. Individually, they were harmless. Collectively, they were a nightmare. The drones spread out in complex patterns across the major shipping lanes. They weren't blocking anything, technically, but they were everywhere. Ships had to slow down, adjust course, and navigate carefully to avoid collisions. One Varathan destroyer got impatient and tried to bull its way through a dense cluster of drones. The drones scattered perfectly, then reformed their pattern behind the ship. The destroyer captain tried to shoot some of them. The drones dodged. Then they started following the destroyer, matching its speed and course. The Varathan captain panicked and called for backup. 2 cruisers arrived to help. The drones split into 3 groups and started following all 3 ships. When the Varathan tried aggressive maneuvers to shake them loose, one cruiser nearly collided with the destroyer. The other cruiser crashed into a cargo freighter trying to avoid the chaos. No one died, but the Varathan looked like fools. Their warships had been outsmarted by tiny human drones that cost less than a shuttle ticket. "We apologize for the confusion," Admiral Park said in his next statement. "Our drones are programmed with defensive protocols. When they detect aggressive behavior, they attempt to maintain observation position. We're working on improving their threat assessment algorithms." The galaxy was starting to pay attention. Other species on the Galactic Council began watching the human exercises with interest. Some found them amusing, others found them disturbing. All of them noticed that humanity was demonstrating capabilities no one had expected. The exercises were being broadcast on open channels. Human instructors provided running commentary, explaining each maneuver in detail. It was educational. It was also deeply threatening. Note the formation spacing, one instructor explained as human fighters practiced intercept patterns. Optimal distance for mutual support while maintaining independent targeting solutions. Now watch as Blue Squadron demonstrates the pincer approach against a superior force. The superior force in question was a simulated Varathan battle group. Everyone watching understood the message. The humans weren't just practicing. They were showing exactly how they would dismantle Varathan ships in actual combat. Colonel Cho Doyen ran a different kind of exercise. His orbital drop troops practiced rapid insertion techniques. They would drop from orbit in armored pods, land on designated targets, secure the area, and extract within minutes. The designated targets were abandoned facilities. Old mining stations, derelict ships, nothing currently in use. But everyone noticed that several of these targets were suspiciously similar in layout to the colonies the Varathan had captured. Hostage rescue scenario, Cho explained during one broadcast. Speed is critical. We aim to be in and out before the enemy can respond. Watch how the first team secures the perimeter while the second team extracts the civilians. His troops moved like a well-oiled machine. They breached doors, cleared rooms, and evacuated theoretical hostages with brutal efficiency. The entire operation took 17 minutes from drop to extraction. The Varathan High Command watched these exercises with growing unease. They had thought the humans were bluffing, playing games, but this was too organized, too specific. The humans were drilling for something. Ambassador Kim gave an interview to a major galactic news network. She wore her diplomatic smile and spoke in calm, measured tones. Humanity has learned valuable lessons from our history, she said. The best way to avoid war is to be so well prepared that no one wants to fight you. These exercises demonstrate our commitment to protecting our people and our interests. The reporter asked the obvious question. Is this a response to the Varathan situation? Kim's smile never wavered. We're always training. Military readiness is an ongoing process. If the Varathan choose to interpret our standard operations as some kind of message, that's their decision. 3 weeks into the exercises, the Varathan made their move. They couldn't let this continue. Their reputation was being destroyed. Their military looked incompetent. Their supply lines were disrupted. The Varathan High Command mobilized their 6th battle fleet, 200 warships, the pride of their military, led by their flagship, the World Breaker, a dreadnought that had never lost a battle in 50 years of service. They positioned this massive fleet directly between human forces and the captured colonies. The message was clear: stop your games or face real consequences. Admiral Park received the news and smiled. That cold, predatory smile that his staff had learned to recognize. The smile that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. They took the bait, he said quietly. Alert all units. We're moving to Phase 3. Sir, Captain Lee said carefully. That's a lot of ships. Are you sure about this? Park looked at the tactical display showing the Varathan Armada. Absolutely sure. Send out the announcement. Fleet Exercise Omega-7 will now include advanced combat simulations against peer opponents. This is an excellent opportunity to test our doctrine against a numerically superior force. He paused, then added, and activate the swarm. The Varathan 6th Battle Fleet hung in space like a wall of steel and fire, 200 warships in perfect formation. Their commander, Fleet Admiral Krath, stood on the bridge of the World Breaker and watched the human ships with contempt. They're still coming, his tactical officer reported. The human fleet is not changing course. Krath bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. Humans were fools. They had 40 ships. He had 200. This wasn't going to be a battle. It was going to be a massacre. Let them come. When they're close enough, we'll show them what real military power looks like. What Krath didn't know was that for 3 weeks, human ships had been quietly seeding the region with tiny drones. Millions of them. Each one no bigger than a fist. They drifted through space looking like debris or sensor noise. The Varathan scanners had detected them but dismissed them as unimportant. That was their first mistake. Admiral Park sat in his command center and watched the Varathan fleet position itself. Everything was going exactly according to plan. "How long until the swarm is in position?" 30 seconds, sir," Captain Lee reported from the Indomitable. "All drones are armed and ready. Awaiting your signal," Park counted down in his head. 20 seconds. He thought about the 847 colonists held hostage. 15 seconds. He thought about the Galactic Council abandoning humanity. 10 seconds. He thought about every species in the galaxy who thought humans were weak. "Execute defensive grid test pattern alpha," Park said calmly. Across the sector, millions of tiny drones woke up. They had been drifting for weeks, conserving power, waiting. Now they received their activation signal and began moving with purpose. On the world breaker, alarms started screaming. "Sir, we're detecting massive movement all around us," the tactical officer shouted. "Thousands of small contacts. No, tens of thousands. They're everywhere." Krath stared at his display in confusion. The space around his fleet was suddenly filled with tiny moving objects. They were swarming toward his ships like insects. "What are those things?" "The human drones, sir. They've been in the area for weeks. We thought they were inactive. Shoot them down," Krath ordered. The Varathan ships opened fire. Their point defense systems tracked and destroyed drones by the hundreds. But there were too many. For every drone they killed, 10 more took its place. The swarm flowed around the defensive fire like water, adapting and learning. The first drones reached the world breaker. They attached themselves to the hull and began their work. They didn't try to blow holes in the armor. They didn't need to. Instead, they targeted sensors, communication arrays, and weapon systems. Small shaped charges detonated, destroying delicate equipment with surgical precision. Within minutes, the world breaker was blind. Its long-range sensors were gone. Its communication systems were scrambled. Half its weapons were offline, and it was happening to every ship in the fleet. "We can't see anything," the tactical officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "Short-range sensors only. Communications are down. We can't coordinate with the rest of the fleet." Krath felt ice in his stomach. They had been neutralized without a single human warship firing a shot. His mighty fleet was floating helpless, unable to see, unable to communicate, unable to fight effectively. Admiral Park watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Varathan fleet was completely disabled. Time for Phase 2. "Colonel Cho, you are cleared for the hostage rescue training scenario." "Copy that, sir. Beginning drop operations now." Colonel Cho sat in his drop pod with 49 other soldiers. His regiment had practiced this operation dozens of times over the past 3 weeks. They knew the layout of every building in the captured colonies. They knew where the hostages were being held. They knew where the guards would be stationed. Drop in 3, 2, 1, go. The pods launched from orbit, screaming through space toward the colonies below. Cho felt the familiar pressure as his pod accelerated. He had done this hundreds of times in training. Today was just another drill, except this time the hostages were real. The pods hit atmosphere and began to glow from friction heat. Cho checked his armor systems. Everything green. His rifle was charged. His team was ready. This was going to work. They landed hard, exactly 17 meters from their target building. The pods cracked open and soldiers poured out. Cho led his team to the main entrance. "Breaching in 3, 2, 1. The door exploded inward. Cho was through first, rifle up, scanning for targets. 2 Varathan guards stood frozen in shock. They reached for their weapons. Cho's team was faster. Stun rounds dropped both guards before they could fire a shot. Clear, moving to the holding area. They moved through the building like a well-oiled machine, room by room. Every guard they encountered was stunned and secured. No casualties, no mistakes, exactly like they had practiced. Cho reached the main holding area and saw the hostages. Families huddled together. Children crying. Adults looking scared and hopeless. Until they saw human soldiers coming through the door. "United Earth Space Force," Cho announced. "We're getting you out of here. Stay calm and follow my team." The evacuation took 14 minutes. Every hostage accounted for. Every guard captured. The dropships arrived precisely on schedule. Cho watched the last civilian board and felt a grim satisfaction. 847 people safe. This is Colonel Cho to Admiral Park. Hostage rescue training scenario complete. All objectives achieved. 0 friendly casualties. Excellent work, Colonel. Return to base, but Admiral Park wasn't finished. Not even close. He had saved the best part for last. "Captain Lee, initiate boarding exercise on the World Breaker." Lee grinned. She had been waiting for this. "Boarding teams, you are go. Let's show them how humans do close-quarters combat." Human assault shuttles approached the drifting World Breaker. The great dreadnought couldn't even see them coming with its sensors destroyed. The shuttles clamped onto the hull and began cutting through. Inside the ship, Krath finally got his internal communications working. "Security teams to all boarding points. Repel the humans." But the human boarding teams had studied Varathene ship layouts for weeks. They knew every corridor, every junction, every defensive position. They moved through the ship with devastating efficiency, using stun grenades and non-lethal weapons. They didn't want to kill anyone. This was a training exercise after all. The team reached the bridge in less than 20 minutes. Krath stood with his command staff, weapons drawn, ready to fight to the death. The human team leader stepped through the door. "Fleet Admiral Krath, I presume." "Sir, this is a training exercise. Please lower your weapons. No one needs to get hurt." Krath stared in disbelief. A training exercise. They had boarded his flagship, fought through his security, reached his bridge, and they were calling it training. "You've invaded my ship. We're conducting a close-quarters combat drill, sir. Your cooperation is appreciated." The team leader gestured to his soldiers. They moved forward with stun weapons ready. "Please don't make this difficult." Krath realized he had no choice. His ship was disabled. His fleet was blind. The hostages were gone. And human soldiers were standing on his bridge. He lowered his weapon. His staff followed his example. The human team secured the bridge and began downloading data from the ship's computers. Everything. Fleet movements, tactical plans, communication codes. All of it copied and transmitted to Admiral Park. Before they left, the team leader handed Krath a small package. "A gift from Admiral Park, sir. Thank you for participating in our exercise. Your cooperation has been invaluable for our training." Krath opened the package after the humans departed. Inside was a human flag and a handwritten note. "Next time, choose your enemies more carefully. Regards, Admiral Park Minho." The Varathan reinforcements arrived 6 hours later. They found their 6th battle fleet drifting helpless. Their flagship had been boarded. The colonies were liberated, and the humans were broadcasting footage of the entire operation as part of their training documentation. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humanity had just dismantled one of the most powerful military fleets in known space, without firing a single shot in anger. While calling it a training exercise, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The Varathan demanded action. The other species didn't know what to say. Technically, the humans had done nothing illegal. Military exercises were permitted. The fact that these exercises had humiliated an empire was inconvenient, but not against any law. Ambassador Kim stood before the council with perfect diplomatic composure. "The United Earth Space Force has successfully completed Fleet Exercise Omega-7. We thank the Varathan Empire for their participation. Our forces will now return to standard operations." She paused, letting that sink in, then added with a slight smile, "We hope everyone found the demonstration educational." The Galactic Council Chamber was the oldest building on the station. Built 3,000 years ago by the founding species, it had witnessed countless debates, treaties, and wars. But today, the assembled ambassadors sat in unprecedented silence. Ambassador Kim stood at the human podium and waited. Let them process what had happened. Let them understand what it meant. Humanity had just changed the rules of the game. The Varathan ambassador finally found his voice. His scales were pale with rage. "The humans have committed an act of war. They attacked our fleet, invaded our ships, and kidnapped our personnel." Kim turned to face him with perfect calm. "We conducted a military training exercise in neutral space. All of our actions were documented and broadcast on open channels. We followed every regulation in the Galactic Military Code. You disabled our fleet. We tested our defensive drone network. Your ships entered the exercise area of their own free will. We warned all vessels to maintain safe distance." Kim pulled up a document on the chamber's main display. "Here is our notification, filed 3 weeks ago, outlining the planned exercises in designated zones. You rescued hostages from our custody. We conducted a hostage rescue training drill on abandoned facilities. The fact that your forces happened to be holding human civilians in those locations was unfortunate timing." Kim's expression never changed. Perhaps you should return illegally detained personnel before conducting your own operations in the area. The Varathan ambassador opened his mouth, then closed it. Every argument he could make, Kim had a counter. And all of it was technically legal. Infuriating but legal. An ambassador from the Kelthera collective spoke up. The Kelthera were an ancient insectoid species, neutral in most conflicts. The humans have demonstrated disturbing military capabilities. Should the council not be concerned? Kim turned to address the full council. Humanity has been a member of this council for 5 years. In that time, we have watched conflicts erupt across the galaxy. We have seen stronger species bully weaker ones. We have learned that in this community, strength is the only thing that commands respect. She paused, letting her words sink in. When our colonies were attacked and our people taken hostage, we brought the matter to this council. We asked for help. We were told that territorial disputes are common and that we should negotiate. We were abandoned. So we helped ourselves, and we did it legally, transparently, and with full documentation. Every tactic we used was broadcast for the entire galaxy to see. We hid nothing. The chamber remained silent. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. They had indeed abandoned humanity to face the Varathan alone. Kim pressed her advantage. The question now is not about our capabilities. The question is whether this council wants humanity as a cooperative partner or as an independent operator. Because we are prepared for either option. Admiral Park was not done demonstrating human capabilities. While the council debated, he initiated the final phase of the exercises. He called it Project Deep Strike. All ships prepare for jump, Park ordered. Target coordinates are uploaded. This is a simulation of long-range offensive capability. Execute on my mark. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and reviewed the jump coordinates. They were targeting Varathan core worlds, not the border territories, not military outposts, the actual homeworlds of the Varathan Empire. Captain, are we really doing this? Her tactical officer asked quietly. Lee smiled. We're conducting a training exercise, testing our ability to reach strategic targets. Nothing more. She activated the ship-wide channel. All hands prepare for emergency jump. This will be a rapid insertion drill. Across the human fleet, ships began jumping. They appeared in orbit around Varathan worlds with perfect precision. Not attacking, just appearing, silent and threatening. On the Varathan homeworld, alarms screamed. Defense stations scrambled to respond. But the human ships had already established orbital positions. Perfect firing solutions, complete tactical advantage. Then the messages began broadcasting. Short, simple, terrifying. This is the UES fleet conducting training exercise Omega-7. Simulation parameters established. Orbital bombardment capability confirmed. Exercise complete. Thank you for your cooperation. The Varathan Defense Forces didn't know what to do. The human ships weren't attacking. They were just sitting there, broadcasting their capability to destroy everything below. It was psychological warfare at its finest. This happened simultaneously at 7 Varathan core worlds. 7 times human ships appeared without warning. 7 times they demonstrated the ability to strike at the heart of the Empire. 7 times they proved that Varathan space defenses were meaningless against human tactics. Lieutenant Bay led her fighter squadron in one of these demonstrations. She jumped into orbit around a major industrial world and immediately went into a combat pattern. Her sensors tracked every defense satellite, every patrol ship, every possible threat. Ghost Squadron, this is Ghost Leader. Weapons hot. Targeting solutions locked. Hold position. She kept her finger over the trigger but didn't fire. Just showed that she could. Exercise complete. All units returned to carriers. As her squadron jumped away, Bay thought about her parents. They were colonists in the Cygnus Arm. They could have been among the hostages. This exercise wasn't just about military power. It was personal. Captain Lee coordinated the final display. Every human ship in the sector jumped to maximum alert simultaneously. Weapons armed. Shields up. Targeting computers active. For 30 seconds, humanity showed that it could devastate a dozen star systems at once. Lee watched her tactical display light up with ready indicators. Green across the board. Every ship prepared for combat. Every weapon system online. Every soldier at battle stations. If this were real, they could end the Varathan Empire in the next 60 seconds. Then, as suddenly as it began, everything powered down. Weapons went cold. Shields deactivated. Ships returned to standard operations. Admiral Park sent a message to the Verathan High Command. His tone was cordial, professional, terrifying in its casualness. Fleet Exercise Omega-7 has concluded. All systems performed within acceptable parameters. Our forces will now return to routine operations. We hope you found the demonstration educational. Thank you for your cooperation and understanding during this training period. In the Verathan capital, the High Command gathered in emergency session. They had just watched humanity demonstrate total military superiority. The humans could reach their homeworlds at will, could disable their fleets without breaking a sweat, could rescue hostages before anyone could react, and they had done it all while following the rules. While filing proper paperwork, while calling it training, the Supreme Commander of Verathan forces was an old warrior named Thrak. He had fought in 30 campaigns over 60 years. He understood warfare better than anyone in the room, and he understood what had just happened. We have two choices, Thrak said quietly. We can escalate to actual war against an enemy who has proven they can strike our homeworlds at will. Or we can accept that we were outplayed and negotiate from a position of weakness. We cannot show weakness, another commander protested. Our reputation will be destroyed. Our reputation is already destroyed, Thrak replied. The entire galaxy watched us get humiliated by a species we thought was primitive. The only question now is whether we want to be remembered as the empire that was embarrassed or the empire that was annihilated. The room fell silent. Thrak was right. They had been comprehensively beaten, not in glorious battle, not in honorable combat. They had been played like fools while the humans smiled and filed paperwork. Send a message to the human leadership, Thrak ordered. Tell them we are prepared to negotiate a settlement. The hostages will be released. The colonies will be returned. We will discuss reparations. Reparations? They should be paying us. Thrak fixed the speaker with a cold stare. They invaded our flagship. They rescued their people from our custody. They demonstrated the ability to destroy our homeworlds. And they did it all legally. What exactly do you think we can demand from them? The Verathan issued a statement the next day. They acknowledged a misunderstanding about territorial boundaries. They released all human personnel in their custody. They agreed to withdraw their forces from the disputed territories. They paid modest reparations for damages to human facilities. Most importantly, they requested a military cooperation agreement with humanity. If you can't beat them, join them. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity might be new to galactic politics, but they understood warfare in ways that shocked more established civilizations. They didn't fight fair. They didn't follow conventional wisdom. They thought about problems differently, and most terrifying of all, they could turn a war into a training exercise and use that exercise to destroy you while maintaining perfect legal deniability. Ambassador Kim stood before the council again 2 days later. This time the atmosphere was very different. Species that had ignored humanity now wanted to talk. Trade agreements were offered. Defense pacts were proposed. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be humanity's friend. Kim accepted their attention with grace. But she also made sure they understood the lesson. Humanity prefers cooperation to conflict, but we will defend our interests and our people by any means necessary. We hope that moving forward, 3 months after Fleet Exercise Omega-7, life had changed dramatically for humanity. The colonies in the Cygnus Arm were rebuilt and thriving. New settlements were being established without interference, and Earth's position in the galaxy had fundamentally shifted. Admiral Park stood at the window of his office, looking down at Earth from the orbital command station. He had submitted his retirement papers yesterday. 52 years old and ready to step back. Let the younger officers take over. He had done what he set out to do. Captain Lee appeared in his doorway. Got a minute, sir? Park turned and smiled. Always. What's on your mind? The Council has requested you as their advisor on military innovation. They want you to help develop new strategic doctrines for member species. Lee walked into the office and handed him a datapad. It's a permanent position, good pay. And you'd be shaping galactic military policy for the next generation. Park read through the offer. It was generous. More importantly, it was influential. From this position, he could ensure that humanity's approach to warfare, thinking creatively and asymmetrically, became standard practice across the galaxy. What about you? Park asked. You're taking over the fleet? If you approve, sir. I've already been approached about implementing new training programs. Other species want to send their officers to learn from us. Lee couldn't quite hide her pride. We're setting the standard now. You'll do well, Park said. You always understood that warfare is about thinking, not just fighting. The galaxy needs that perspective. Colonel Cho had his own new assignment. He sat in a conference room with officers from 6 different species. They were forming the Council's Rapid Response Force, an experimental multi-species unit using human tactics and training methods. Speed is everything, Cho explained to the assembled officers. By the time your enemy realizes you're there, the operation should be over. Get in, achieve your objective, get out. A Verithan officer raised his hand. Cho recognized him. Former security chief from the World Breaker, the same ship Cho's troops had boarded during the exercises. Yes, Commander Veth? Colonel, I was on the receiving end of your tactics. You moved through our ship like you had been there 100 times. How do we replicate that level of preparation? Cho smiled. We had been there 100 times. In simulation. We studied your ship designs for weeks. We practiced every corridor, every junction, every possible route. By the time we boarded for real, it was just another drill. So the key is preparation, Veth said thoughtfully. The key is treating every training exercise like a real operation. When the real operation comes, it feels like training. Calm, controlled, practiced. Cho pulled up a tactical map. That's what we're going to teach you. Lieutenant Bay had become something of a celebrity. Her flight recordings during the exercises were used in pilot training programs across the galaxy. She was now an instructor, teaching the next generation of human fighter pilots. Her students called themselves Bay's Hornets. They pushed their fighters to the limit, practicing maneuvers that made veteran pilots nervous just watching. Bay encouraged it. Safe flying was fine for cargo haulers. Combat pilots needed to know their limits. Remember, she told her class, the enemy expects you to fly safe, to follow procedures, to be predictable. That's when you kill them. When they think they know what you're going to do, you do something crazy. A young pilot raised his hand. Instructor, isn't that dangerous? Combat is dangerous, Bay replied. The question is whether you want to be dangerous to yourself or dangerous to the enemy. I prefer to be the one causing problems. Ambassador Kim had perhaps the most important role of all. She now sat on the Council's Security Committee, wielding influence that would have been unthinkable a year ago. She never needed to threaten. Everyone remembered what happened when you pushed humanity too far. She attended a security briefing about a border dispute between 2 minor species. Both sides were making aggressive moves, threatening war. The situation was escalating. Kim listened to the arguments, then spoke calmly. Perhaps both sides would benefit from observing human military exercises. We could demonstrate modern conflict resolution techniques. Show them what contemporary warfare actually looks like. The room fell silent. Several ambassadors actually flinched. The memory of Fleet Exercise Omega-7 was still fresh. The idea of human forces conducting exercises in their territory was terrifying. Both disputing species immediately requested mediation. The conflict was resolved through negotiation within a week. Kim never mentioned the exercises again. She didn't need to. The threat was understood. 5 years passed. Humanity continued to grow in influence and power. The galaxy had adapted to the new reality. Humans were no longer the naive newcomers. They were innovators, strategists, and increasingly, the species everyone wanted as allies. The Verithan Empire, surprisingly, became one of humanity's closest partners. Former enemies developed mutual respect. The Verithan learned to appreciate human creativity in warfare. The humans learned to value Verithan honor and discipline. Together, they made a formidable team. Supreme Commander Thrak often visited Earth to consult with military leaders. He had written a book about the exercises, analyzing human tactics from the perspective of someone who experienced them firsthand. It became required reading at military academies across the galaxy. You broke every rule we thought was fundamental, Thrak said during one visit. He sat with Park, both now advisors rather than active commanders. You showed us that our understanding of warfare was outdated. Park sipped his coffee. We didn't break the rules. We just played a different game. You thought in terms of honor and traditional combat. We thought in terms of objectives and efficiency. It was humiliating, Thrak admitted, but it was also brilliant. And it probably saved millions of lives. If we had actually gone to war, the casualties would have been enormous. That was the point, Park said. We never wanted war. We wanted to show that starting a war with humanity was a terrible idea. Better to demonstrate overwhelming capability than to actually use it. The real test came when a new species made contact with the Galactic Council. They were called the Draken, a militaristic culture with advanced weapons and aggressive territorial claims. They dismissed the Council's authority and demanded tribute from multiple species. The Council debated how to respond. Some species wanted to appease them. Others wanted to form a military coalition. The discussions went in circles for days. Finally, Ambassador Kim spoke up. She smiled, that pleasant smile that everyone had learned to fear. Perhaps the Draken would benefit from observing our next fleet training exercise. It's been a while since we've run a comprehensive drill. Admiral Park, would you be willing to coordinate something educational? The council chamber went dead silent. Several ambassadors actually smiled. The Verithan ambassador laughed out loud. Park, attending via video link, nodded slowly. I'm sure we could arrange something. Perhaps a demonstration of our latest tactical innovations? I've been working on some interesting new concepts. The Draken ambassador looked confused. Training exercises? What does that have to do with our demands? Every other ambassador in the chamber turned to stare at him. The Verithan ambassador leaned over and whispered something. The Draken's expression changed from confusion to alarm. Within an hour, the Draken requested private negotiations. Within a day, they had withdrawn all hostile demands and expressed interest in joining the council as cooperative members. They never explained what changed their minds. They didn't need to. That evening, Park and Kim met for drinks at a bar on the orbital station. They sat by a large window overlooking Earth, watching the planet slowly rotate below them. Do you think they learned the lesson? Park asked, swirling his whiskey. Kim considered the question. Which lesson? Don't provoke humanity? No, the real lesson. That we'd rather train than fight, rather teach than destroy. The exercises worked because we never wanted war in the first place. We just wanted to be left alone to live our lives. Kim smiled. Maybe some of them learned that. Others just learned that humans are dangerous enemies and valuable allies. Either lesson works. Park thought about the 847 colonists they had rescued, about the wars they had prevented by demonstrating overwhelming capability, about the new relationships humanity had built through strength and creativity. You know what the best part is? Park said. We did it our way. We didn't follow their rules or their traditions. We showed them that humanity brings something new to the galaxy. A different perspective, a different approach to solving problems. And now they're all trying to think like us, Kim added. The Park protocols, the asymmetric warfare doctrines, the focus on psychological operations and creative tactics. We've changed how the entire galaxy thinks about conflict. Is that a good thing? Park wondered aloud. It's a human thing, Kim replied. We don't fit into their boxes. We don't follow their paths. We make our own way. Always have. Always will. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Earth turn. Then Park raised his glass. To humanity. May we always be too creative for our own good. Kim clinked her glass against his. To humanity. May our enemies always underestimate us until it's too late. They drank and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, fleets were training. Soldier.